want to open up the questions to all three of our panelists, and let us go a few more minutes with the questions so that we can hear from some of the others as well. And I actually, Gita, if you don't mind, I would have you I would ask you to also respond to the very last question, because I know that Randy alluded to it, but that Portland Public Schools very recently went out for a new contract bid process, and in that process asked folks how indeed they would support their Harvest of the Month program, because their benevolent broker, EcoTrust, was telling them stupid things like you can get kiwis and lemon cucumbers with no knowledge of what was going on in the marketplace. And so they couldn't help but wonder whether there wasn't a distribution partner out there who could give them better service, rightly so.
Yeah, what I do always, but before I put out an RFP, I always meet with the vendors and just have an informal meeting with them. I usually have an agenda, questions I want to ask, but I just have a real open dialogue. This is what we're looking for. For example, it doesn't have to do with produce, but I just did one for milk, and I really wanted to do something out there that was different, Portland Public Schools hadn't done before, and so I just brought the milk vendors in, and I brought them in individually. I did not bring them in as a group. You guys don't like to share a lot when you're in a group, but individually they're very happy to talk with you openly, give you your honest opinion, and their honest opinion, and it works really well. I feel like I've been very successful with the RFPs by having the meetings ahead. And then we generally also have a formal pre-bid conference where the RFP has already been let, and it's usually an optional conference, and they come, and that's a time when they can ask the questions. But before I even put out the specifications and what I'm looking for, I have that informal meeting with each of the distributors or whoever's involved with that RFP individually.
We've heard a little bit about child nutrition, federal policy coming up. We've heard about distribution models in one place that might be replicated elsewhere. And I'm just wondering if anyone is working on or interested in talking about the next round of federal transportation policy. There's been some conversations about how food and food transportation might be brought into that conversation, but to me it's not really clear how that might happen. So I think it would be really exciting to get some of the people who are interested in distribution and research on distribution thinking and talking about how we can insert ourselves in that conversation to get some of the goals around reducing greenhouse gas emissions and fresher food in a different arena. So I'm just throwing that out as maybe a question to the panelists or anyone in the room that have some ideas about that.
I in particular don't.
Yeah, just mention to that point, in Oregon we actually, we have greenhouse gas emissions targets for 2020. We'll start to reduce in 2020 and then need a target in 2050. As part of that, those targets, it was determined that we couldn't meet those targets without reducing vehicle miles traveled in the state, and specifically car and truck traffic. And so in the next legislative session, there will be a proposal around creating statewide and local plans for targets for reducing vehicle miles traveled, which are negotiated between the 6 municipalities in the state and the state Transportation Commission and the Global Warming Commission. And so they're talking a lot about these different points. One of them is the transportation within the food system itself. And so I think there really are opportunities to enter and engage in that conversation through rethinking kind of our food system and how do we move toward a more local food system. And there's a lot of momentum and energy around that. But it's kind of like there's these conversations happening here, and then there's those conversations happening among land use planners and transportation planners that really speak a different kind of dialogue. But I think there's a lot of similar goals in those different movements.
Well, one way to solve that, I'm sure the distributors would love it, is more food on one truck. So that would be less farmers coming to back doors. But if we develop some sort of distribution system, it's a challenge. We in Portland had to relook at how we've made daily deliveries, and because we don't have the facilities for storage at each site, at school site for a week's worth of groceries. We're working on that. But what we ended up doing is cutting down our daily deliveries and going to as many schools as possible to 3 times a week. And we're really evaluating how often we go to a school and how far can we cut that.
I don't know where that goes, or where laws will lead that, where you dissolve companies because all of a sudden only one person can make that delivery. Am I willing to deliver my competitor's product on my truck to dissolve those miles? I don't know how that works. So I don't know that I have the answer to that, or what a solution might be. But it's an interesting time for distributors, and certainly part of the reason that I chose to get back into Cisco is the value that it offers in terms of being able to, if we do it well and we listen to what your needs are and support that, we can put most of the product you need on one truck coming into your location. Now, it sounds like a sales pitch, and it kind of is, but isn't that what we're trying to achieve through that conversation? So it's, whether we do that on in our trucks or in a community truck, however that happens, that's essentially what needs to happen.